Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, pretty good. Thank you. And welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. I am the Reverend Dana Worsnop, ministry of this lively, devoted, and possibility-filled community. We gather to keep love at the center of our lives. And it is so good to see everyone here, no matter how you find yourself among us, as roomers, those here in the room, or as Zoomers, those joining us in our hybrid services from Zoom or other platforms. And whether you walked, skipped, drove, cycled, or rolled to get here and into this room, we are glad that you have joined us. We are a community of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders, and all are welcome here. We preface our services by acknowledging that our building rests on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Chumash peoples. So let us pause and remember that the ground we live on is sacred. It is ground that cries out for justice and responsible stewardship. And in so remembering, may we find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. A couple of quick announcements. Our annual auction theme this year is Under the Sea. And the kickoff party is on October 5th. And so now it's time to submit your most nifty auction donations. The best way is online, and you can also ask questions at the connecting table in Berg Hall after the service, or to get a physical donation form. Also, circle dinners are back. This is a great way to meet new folks and share food and drink heartily together. And again, check it out at the connecting table for more information and signups for circle dinners. And lastly, you are all invited to share the journey and save the planet with our church's new rideshare program. It pairs up people who sign up not just to share rides to church, but rides to grocery stores, events, and more. And if you sign up to need a ride or to offer a ride, either way works. And the link to sign up will be on UUCV this week, our online weekly newsletter. And which is also, by the way, a great way to find out what's happening around this lively community if you open it, and after you open it, if you read it. We gather, holding a long history behind us and with possibility before us, here in this present as we enter sacred space.
I am Worship Associate Xenia Young, and on this beautiful Sunday morning, as we're gathered all together, we invite those who are Zooming or streaming into this service to also take a moment and light a chalice or a candle at home, as Reverend Dana lights the chalice of our free faith here in the sanctuary. We begin our service today with these words from David Blanchard. Come down off the ladder, wash out the paintbrushes. Shake the sand out of your shoes and get up off your muddy knees and give the garden a morning off. Fold up the newspaper, turn off the coffee pot, close up your calendar already filled with dates and times and people and places that claim you. This church is ready for you to fill its rooms, to create its spirit, to generate its warmth, to kindle its light. This church is ready for you to make community, to create beauty and to bend it towards justice, to serve its ideals. This church is ready for you to be here, honoring our past, invigorating our present, and dreaming our future. This is your church. Here we are home. Here we are whole. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Carolyn Bierke, the music director, and I'd like to welcome you all here in the sanctuary and online. Our opening hymn is Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Please rise and bow to your spirit and join in singing.
So, our director of family ministries is actually taking a Sunday off. Lilia Rappaport is not with us this morning, so I get to read the story, which I love to do. So I'm going to invite all those who are young and young at heart, please come forward for the story. Yay! Hey, hey, hey. Very lovely. Okay, so today's service is about American history and about Unitarians and about all kinds of great things all together. But it's also going to be about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And so we have a story about the Constitution, which, and it's the preamble to the Constitution, and it is the Constitution is a list of rules that and promises that are written down. They were written down by people like us, and it all sounds very commonsensical, right? And a couple of 100 years ago, those things weren't common at all. The Constitution changed things. And so back then, if you said something and the people who were in charge didn't like it, they could put you in jail, or sometimes what they did when somebody said something they didn't like, they tarred and feathered them. And what that was is they dipped them in tar and then put feathers all over, then the feathers on them, and the feathers stuck to the tar. It was actually, we don't do that anymore, by the way. But when the Constitution was new, it gave us rights and privileges that people hadn't had before, including freedom of speech, so that you couldn't get in trouble for speaking your mind. And so today's story is called We the Kids. The preamble to the Constitution of the United States, illustrated with a foreword by David Cuttrow. So the preamble, and that's all we're talking about there. The Constitution's pretty long, but the preamble is short. And it is the introduction, and it gives the main goals and purposes of the Constitution. And it was written nearly 250 years ago, and so it has a lot of very old-fashioned language that sometimes is really poetic. And so this story, what it's doing is it's translating it into words that are easier to understand for all of us. It begins, "We, the people of the United States," which is all the people, including kids, "in order to form a more perfect union," which means that we come together to make things better for everyone in our country. "In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice," which means make things fair for everybody, "ensure domestic tranquility," to make sure that we all have a nice life and we get along with one another, "provide for the common defense," then that means protecting us from people or countries who might try to harm us, as in a war, and to help us if we are harmed in some way. "Promote the general welfare," and that means help make life good for everybody so that they have enough to eat, a place to live, being safe and having friends and fun times are some of the things that make our lives good. The general welfare, general goodness of our lives. "And secure the blessings of liberty." That means to protect our rights and freedoms and to not let anyone take them away. And being able to choose our religion, to say what we think, and to get together with other people are some of the freedoms that we have, that before the Constitution, it wasn't so clear. "To ourselves and our posterity," that means for kids, parents, and other grown-ups, and all the people who will come after us. That's our posterity. If you grow up and have kids, that's posterity, and then all the people who come after that. "Do ordain and establish this Constitution." That means we wrote it down, and then we're going to live by it. It's a list of rules and promises for our government and our people. "For the United States of America," the country where we live. So, in all those, that's what the preamble says. There's a whole lot more to it, and it's been changed a lot over the years, because that's another thing, we get to change it. Yet not this part. We have never changed this part because it's pretty good. And so now the next slide is going to give us the whole thing, and I invite you, if you can, to read along and say it aloud all together. It's behind. Yeah, you'll see it. Okay, so join with me. "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Okay, pretty good stuff for folks who are 250 years old. And so now we are going to sing you on your way to your religious exploration adventures for this summer. And so if the people in the congregation will rise, face the center, form a bridge of love as we sing.
We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life, we hold you in our love as you go.
This most generous congregation gives away the entire plate or collection to an organization in the larger community or to funds that help people in our own church. Those at home have two ways to give: through the link posted in the chat or by texting the word assist from your phone number on the screen. Folks who are present in the sanctuary can text to give, or you can still write a check or give cash and then drop it in the new box labeled donations at the back of the sanctuary after the service. Today, our offering goes to Heart to Heart, an organization that provides critical goods to relatives who find themselves caring for a young family member who suddenly cannot be cared for by their parents. You can only imagine all the changes that this would cause and all the needs that develop as a result. People need things like clothing, backpacks, bedding, cribs, strollers, car seats. I could go on and on. Imagine the upheaval for a grandmother, for example, who finds herself suddenly caring for 7 little ones in her home. Heart to Heart makes this transition a tiny bit easier by providing as many goods as they possibly can. Families are served both via individual appointments and also through big giveaway events throughout the year. Right now, there are 1,000 Kingship families in Ventura County, and Heart to Heart is especially at need at this moment because just this last Saturday, they hosted a back-to-school event at which each child got school supplies and got to pick out a new pair of shoes. They tell us that Pokemon and Hello Kitty were especially popular.
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6.
Hearts and our minds, we are weaving the
Thank you for your generosity, which weaves our lives into a tapestry of love we call community.
This is the time in the service where we hold up some of the joys and sorrows that touch all our lives. We place stones in water for both the celebrations and sorrows in our hearts, making ripples that are felt throughout the entire community. You can submit a joy or sorrow for sharing via a link on the website, uuventura.org, or in our Thursday email bulletin, UUCV This Week. Those received by 8 o'clock Saturday evening will normally be shared that Sunday.
We invite you now to speak into the gathered community, the names of those you wish to celebrate or memorialize, or those who are in need of the loving embrace of this beloved community.
Now, Dana will place one final stone in the water for all those joys and sorrows just shared and those yet unspoken in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. May we be truly grateful for all that is our life.
Please remain seated as we join in singing This Is My Song.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Our reading today is the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot concentrate, we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause to which they gave that last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth.
I offer a second reading from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in a speech, "Where do we go from here?" When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds of despair, and when our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, let us remember that there is a creative force in the universe working to pull down the gigantic mountains of evil, a power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. Let us realize the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I invite you now into a time of meditation. Close your eyes or soften your gaze and breathe, letting your breath fall into a natural rhythm. Notice body and breath, breath and body working together. Where lies your despair? Where lies your hope? To what do you dedicate your life? A silent meditation.
conscience guide every deed. May all people grow to know their worth and dignity. In our church may democracy reign. Listen to another's view. May we share all our joys and our pain. May our love shine out of each and every view. May we work for peace and for freedom, justice and compassionate ways. Love the web of life, our earth, the universe. This is our fervent prayer. May we all respect one another. May we help a neighbor in need. May we seek the truth and work for world community. May we grow together in spirit. May our conscience guide every deed. May all people grow to know their worth and dignity. In our church may democracy reign. May we learn to listen to another's view. May we share all our joys and our pain. May our love shine out of each and every view. May we work for peace and for freedom, justice and compassionate ways. Love the web of life, our earth, the universe. This is our fervent prayer.
Did y'all hear that? My favorite response. Two favorite responses to music. One is like, you just can't, you leap up out of the, with a wild applause. But actually, my favorite is the hushed silence and the, wow, that was cool. Thank you. Have you ever noticed that folks who, with particular identities, will often tell you about famous people who belong to their group? A Jewish friend used to love to do this. We'd be talking about someone famous, and he'd chime in, he's Jewish. Which indeed I did not always know. In my times in Canada, I found people eager to name Canadians who were famous beyond their homeland. A congregant in Toronto once told me that Hollywood was a Canadian invention because Mary Pickford, Samuel Goldwyn, Louis B. Mayer, and Jack Warner were all Canadian. And Charlie Chaplin spent a lot of time there before he made it big in Hollywood. And small and mighty UUs are far from immune from this practice. You can get t-shirts with lists of famous members of our faith. Though I have to tell you, if you see Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson, Franklin's a hard no, honestly. And Jefferson said a few things that maybe, but not really. And someone has actually written a short book on UUs on postage stamps. Though, did you know that Superman is a Unitarian Universalist? Okay, not Superman, but Christopher Reeve, the first movie Superman, was a self-proclaimed UU. At first, when Reeve would talk about his spiritual life, he mostly just quoted Abraham Lincoln. When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That's my religion. Which does sound a little Unitarian adjacent. But then in the early 2000s, Reeve told Larry King, live on television, that he was a UU. He said in part, as a kid, religion seemed a bit scary. I was kind of guilty while going to church. But over time, I have actually become a Unitarian. Because it's all-inclusive, and it's about the goodness in people. That God loves us, and he assumes that we are good. And also it just assumes that we have a moral compass inside us. And so we can truthfully proclaim Superman as one of our own. Oh, and Butch Cassidy too. Paul Newman's father was Jewish, which my old friend was happy to point out. Though he and Joanne Woodward attended a UU church in Connecticut together for many years. Paul Newman. Reeve's connection with Lincoln is more than coincidental. And no, Lincoln was not a Unitarian. Yet he was influenced, especially in the writing of the Gettysburg Address, by radical Unitarian minister, transcendentalist, and abolitionist Theodore Parker. Lincoln did not attend church, at least not regularly, and he was circumspect about his faith all of his life. He knew his Bible well, and it perplexed him. And he knew far better than to claim God on any side of a conflict. He was also deeply influenced by the transcendentalists, most of whom were Unitarian. He was independent-minded and unorthodox, and still, a deep faith sustained him through great personal crisis and through his determination to hold the Union together and to end slavery. According to Gary Will's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Lincoln at Gettysburg, the Gettysburg Address shifted the foundational paradigm of the nation. In 1863, Lincoln's audience would have been surprised by the opening words, 77 years ago. Our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation. Words that are so familiar to us now that we miss their novelty at the time. For in 1863, most Americans, Wills says, considered 1787, when the Constitution was written, as the year our country was born. Lincoln took us back to 1776 and the Declaration of Independence. And this was part of Parker's influence. Parker called the Declaration the American idea. He viewed American history as a progressive living up to and into this ideal. He worked himself literally to death defying what he saw as a slave conspiracy that was trying to move the country in the opposite direction. In this great speech at Gettysburg, Lincoln changed the way we define America and our sense of history. We are not just a people who come together to form a more perfect union. We are a people dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. A lofty aim worthy of commitment and sacrifice, as Lincoln said. And while our UU heritage is not a seamless tale of always being on the right side of history, certainly, looking back, we can see that many were. And Theodore Parker was among them. He actively participated in the Underground Railroad and is said to have kept a gun in his pulpit in case the authorities ever came after him for harboring fugitive slaves. Yet, very few of his, to our discredit, he is very much to our credit. To our discredit, very few of his ministerial colleagues in Boston would exchange pulpits with Parker because this was just a bridge too far. They almost voted him out of the ministry altogether. And it is this Parker who influenced Lincoln. Parker defined democracy as, quote, government of all the people, by all of the people, for all of the people. Lincoln was pithier, certainly, though Parker was the originator. Historian Heather Cox Richardson also notes Lincoln's return to the Declaration in his responses to Southern oligarchs who actually repudiated it in defense of enslaving people. For them, she writes, the oligarchs, the only true way to look at the world was to understand that some people were better than others and had the right and maybe the duty to rule. Richardson, in one of her letters from an American, recently quoted South Carolina Senator James Henry Hammond, who said in 1858, okay, this isn't funny, but it's ironically so. He said in 1858, I repudiate as ridiculously absurd that much lauded but nowhere accredited dogma of Mr. Jefferson that all men are born equal. In the months that followed, Lincoln rose to Hammond's repudiation by standing firmly by the truths in the Declaration. He said, this is Lincoln, declaring that some races are lesser than others would, quote, rub out the sentiment of liberty in the country and transform this government into a government of some other form. It is the argument that kings have made for enslaving the people in all ages of the world. In another speech, he said, I should like to know if taking this old Declaration of Independence, which declares that all men are equal upon principle, and making exceptions to it, where will it stop? If that declaration is not the truth, let us get the statute book and tear it out. Ironically, for our times, those Southern oligarchs were Democrats who were attempting to use the flaws in our less than perfect Constitution to cement their power, to actually undermine democracy, while the newly forming Republicans were those embracing the possibilities for greater liberty laid out in the Declaration. And we get to go back to our forebear, our religious, faithful forebear, Parker, who is also, in part, responsible for our present day understanding that there is a moral arc of the universe that bends toward justice, and that we are a people dedicated to the tasks that that arc demands of us. For Parker also wrote in those fraught times before the Civil War, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, and from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." Dr. King read Parker in seminary and reframed him for our times. Also pithier than Parker and more poetic, King said, the arc of the moral universe is long and it bends toward justice. We know those words like they're written in our hearts, and I always find it important, or periodically find it important, to source them more deeply with Theodore Parker. These are also words akin to Lincoln's as he rededicated us at Gettysburg to equality and fairness. And somewhere between Parker, Lincoln, and King, I can see that arc bending through our entire history as a nation ever expanding an inclusive embrace of peoples and their rights. And we get this wrong too, over and over. Indeed, sometimes I despair that justice delayed again and again disproves these three great men. Yet, as Parker notes, the arc is long and our vision is always shorter. And there are many ways to view that arc and our times. Lincoln was not as radical as Parker. He knew that he couldn't free the slaves right away, and initially he presented the Civil War as necessary for preserving the Union, not for ending slavery. Lincoln was dealing in his time with more than 70 years of avoidance of the central moral dilemma of our nation. The framers of the Constitution knew that slavery would be a deal breaker and we would never have a Constitution if we tried to ban it then in 1887. So they included it in a seriously imperfect document and deferred the moral crisis to later generations. Lincoln stepped into that moral scar across our country. And yet, Lincoln waited for the ripest time to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. He declared it in September of 1862 to take effect on January 1st, 1863. He made the case for ending slavery, which, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't really fully end slavery. So he made then the case for ending slavery altogether in the Gettysburg Address in November of 1863. And those words have reverberated through history. Yes, we remember them. We long remember them and note them. If we are a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, how can we enslave an entire race? If that is so, how can we deny women and African Americans the right to vote? If that is so, how can we deny any one group the full fruits of this country's gifts and potential. The Declaration set forth the principle that all men are created equal. The Constitution organized us into a government that seeks to create a more perfect union, acknowledging that we were not there yet. And I would say we never will be a perfect union, because that's not the point. Not only is it not possible, it's not the point. Lincoln and Parker saw the promise in a government of, by, and for the people, and Dr. King and Parker translated the endeavor of our democracy of equality and liberty and the striving to be more perfect into a moral arc that bends ever and always toward justice. It seems for years that I have struggled with my belief in the ideals of our founding and the reality of how far we are from living all the way into them. It has sometimes made it hard to feel patriotic. Although I will say that my despairing self has gotten quite a little boost of late. And even in my most despairing times, I cannot repudiate the great arc toward justice of which we are a part. This nation was founded on high and noble ideals, and we are the inheritors of that great legacy. We in this nation, not just among Unitarian Universalists, but doesn't it make you feel a little proud about the influence that we had through it all? Does me. This is a time to be more patriotic and stand up for those ideals. For we hold these many truths, some self-evident, some aspirational, and some filled with possibilities yet unknown. This is our task. It won't always be easy, for the road is rarely smooth. Indeed, it is often messy and even uncomfortable. And yet, we are ever and always in this together. Amen. May it be so. I invite you now into a time of prayer. Holy beingness of many names and no name, creative force of hope, possibility, justice, and love, Spirit of life which dwells within and among and beyond us this day and always. May we know hope in our bones. May we find comfort, love, and support when we are afflicted, and may we be afflicted, pushed and challenged when we become too comfortable. May we reach out to those among us who are marginalized, excluded, downtrodden, disenfranchised. And may our very lives bend toward justice. And may all those who are ill find healing. May those who are in despair find hope. May those who are without shelter find home. And may all those who are suffering conflict and war in many nations throughout the world, may we all know peace. Amen and blessed be.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing Come and Go With Me.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
Please join me in reading the words on the screen as we prepare to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. Those we carry into our lives until we are together again.
For all here in the sanctuary, you are invited after the service for coffee, tea, and bagels, and conversation in our community room called Berg Hall through either of these sets of doors. While you're there, you might want to drop by the round table with a welcome center sign overhead to visit with friendly folk who are there just waiting to say hello. And you can also find out information there about our auction and circle dinners and lots of other stuff. And also, you can, on your way out, you can put cash or check in our offering box on the wall at the back of the sanctuary over there. And I hope that those who are on Zoom will hang around, visit with one another and with the folks in Berg Hall who can join in the conversation on the big screen TV there. Welcome to community. And I leave you with these words from the Reverend Wayne Arneson, which are some of my favorites, particularly when times seem really rough. And though we have had a bit of an uplift in the last couple of weeks, I think they're still really apt, because we have to remember. He tells us, take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go forth in love, go forth in peace. May it be so.